The first thing I always do to determine whether a character has growth or not is to look at the very first scene of that story and look at the end. I like to do this in order to examine how much and what events in the story spark change in the character from the end. Characters that remain stationary throughout a plot I find boring and don't really stand out to me, with a few exceptions depending on how the story is told. Today we're going to take a look at a story that should have achieved this, but through misunderstanding of what the original creator was trying to achieve, we'll come up with an answer to an age-old question. How exactly do you adapt a book? O Iris, goddess of the rainbow, please accept my offering.
Ugh, it's you.
Mr. D, good to see
What do you want?
How's things at Camp Half-Blood? You miss me? I bet you miss me.
I don't miss you.
Well, you got your alcohol
This
back at least. That's good.
water.
It's not wine, but I need a favor.
It's always a favor with you, Noah Cream.
We've been through this. It's Nolan Dean.
Whatever, what do you want?
Listen, I need a copy of the sacred text. I'm doing a video, and it would be really helpful. Think you can send it through this Iris
Want to read
message?
the text? I thought you mortals just waited for the movie.
Well, some do, but that's kind of what this video is
Fine.
about.
Take it. Don't call here again. You're 22, you're too old for Camp Half-Blood.
That hurts, Mr. D.
Goodbye, Noah.
I told you, it's Nolan. You might be looking at me thinking, oh, well, here's another long-time Percy Jackson fan harping on about why the book's better because the movie ruined his childhood and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not what this video is about. So sit back, grab yourself some nectar, and let's talk the Lightning Thief.
There. Whoa, whoa! You stole the lightning bolt!
Now, I can remember hearing about Percy Jackson growing up, but for some odd reason, I never ended up reading the books or seeing the movie until earlier last year. For those of you who don't know, Percy Jackson is a series of books about a boy from New York who discovers he's a demigod, the son of Poseidon to be precise. He's then taken to Camp Half-Blood, where he trains to be a hero alongside other demigod children, fighting monsters and Greek gods wherever he goes. Author Riordan was inspired to write this story as a teacher of Greek mythology, and wanted to come up with a story to tell his son after he ran out of original Greek myths to tell him at night. The book was released in 2005 to rave reviews and became an instant bestseller. The film rights were secured later, and the Lightning Thief movie came out in 2010, directed by Chris Columbus, known for adapting the first two books in the equally successful Harry Potter series. Leading up to the film's release, it was looking good. Acclaimed older actors were cast as the film's adult roles, whereas the kids were played by relative newcomers at the time, and it was clear that the studio was looking to replicate the success of Harry Potter with this series, as the film adaptation of The Deathly Hallows was fast approaching, and adaptations of YA fantasy stories were on the rise. And then the movie came out, and it wasn't good. Now, you may be saying, well, Nolan, being 100% accurate to the source material isn't a guaranteed success either. Sometimes changes have to be made. Even Harry Potter, which you mentioned earlier, changed a lot of details from the books, and they were still great movies. Well, opinionated viewer, you are absolutely right. The Harry Potter movies never adapted every single moment of the books, and still gathered critical and financial success. But here's the difference. The creators behind Harry Potter, even though they changed or omitted some elements, remembered the core of what Harry Potter was about. The Percy Jackson movies did not, and here's why. The newcomers cast in the roles of Percy, Annabeth, and Grover may all be fine actors, but in no way do they even resemble their book counterparts, and whilst it's understandable that they did this so they wouldn't have to work with child actors, it fundamentally changes a large part of the entire series. Percy and Annabeth are both 12 years old in The Lightning Thief, and the film cast actors that look as if they're in their late teens. Why this bothers me is that a huge part of the book's main plot is that Percy is believed to be a part of a prophecy when he turns 16. and he's going to have to make a difficult choice regarding the future of Camp Half-Blood and Mount Olympus. By making Percy much older and not even mentioning this prophecy in the movie, it gives the series nothing to build towards. At the end, by omitting this, the film feels much less layered in its story, as if the studio wasn't confident in the first place and was simply using the book's popularity as a way to cash in on the fanbase. Which it was, and that did not work in their favour. Other elements that were eliminated included characters like Clarice, Ares, Nancy Bobafit, who are all part of Percy's journey. Taking this out is the equivalent of unraveling a loose string inside a sweater to the point where it all crumbles into a nonsensical, substanceless mess. These three characters all represent an element that Percy has to grow above, and that's his constant struggle with being bullied. Nancy Bobafit bullies him at school, Clarice bullies him at Camp Half-Blood, and Ares attempts to bully him into doing his bidding on the quest. At the end, when he's overcome all this in the book, and against all odds defeats Ares on a beach out of pure luck, there's a sense of growth and accomplishment that the film does not capture at all. More on this later. Another thing they attempt to do is change the events regarding the quest. A common element of a lot of Greek storytelling is that the heroes will often wander around aimlessly and be attacked by one monster after another, and the book remembered this. The film opted for a more traditional approach, in which finding a set of pearls was linked to every monster attack, kind of like achieving a treasure after beating a level in a video game. Which ultimately doesn't work as well in the book, because the pearls were simply given to Percy at the beginning of his quest in the book. He didn't have to acquire them. As a result, a majority of the film's runtime is cluttered with an element that didn't even need to be there, thus removing time for the more tender moments in the story where Annabeth Grover and Percy grow closer as characters. They barely feel like they've grown at all by the time this film ends. I don't mind if some events are changed, but an adaptation always falls on its face when it fails to understand the core element of what the story is about. The main theme of the book is discovery. Percy starts off as a troubled kid who has no idea what he wants to be. As far as he's concerned, he's a nobody and a loser, much like what being targeted for learning disabilities can feel like for a child, and it's worth noting that an additional inspiration for Rick Riordan was that his son had ADHD and dyslexia. Rick Riordan wants the audience reading this story to believe in themselves and discover who they are, not letting any difficulties isolate them, and it's empowering that he turns an element of bullying like ADHD and dyslexia into something that gives Percy and the other kids at Camp Half-Blood an advantage. In this story, Percy's won. He has found a group of people like him who understand what he is going through and will always be there for him regardless. He's found a family. The film, however, in its very first scene, flat out tells us that Percy is the son of Poseidon by opening with the two gods arguing and then moving to a scene where Percy is in water, adding no element of surprise to who his godparent is. Thus, movie Percy feels like he has nothing to prove or discover about himself, and simply goes through the plot of the movie in a much more passive manner. Rather than have Percy's journey be about him overcoming bullies and discover who he is, in the film his final battle is with Luke, who hasn't been betrayed as a bully at all in the film, more like a friend. And out of nowhere, Percy states that he's the son of Poseidon, and then seemingly drowns Luke with none of that concern or even a layer of sympathy he would have had for him in the book up to this point. You never get the feeling that movie Percy has a troubled life in the same way that book Percy does, thus making him less empathetic as a character and therefore less relatable with nothing to really overcome. There's no tension when he comes up to obstacles. It's like we're just waiting to get to the next action scene without any care or fear for the main character's survival. What I think we can learn from this is that adapting an author's work without care or respect for what the author was trying to convey is quite simply an arrogant and shallow process in adapting a book for the big screen. In a generation where reading is almost frowned upon and many people often just wait for the movie, I think there's no other adaptation out there that sums up the negative effects of that more than The Lightning Thief. And the sad element of that is, had the creators behind this movie took the care to read and understand the kind of story Rick Riordan was trying to tell, This movie would have been great. Fans would have loved it, and the studio would have had the next Harry Potter. But alas, they did not. They took the easy way out, and the film's dismal box office and critical reception didn't do much in its favour, leaving the fans, the author, and the studio disappointed. But I do believe there is hope for Percy Jackson to live again. Recently, a series of unfortunate events has found success in a newer, more loyal adaptation on Netflix, and I believe Percy Jackson can achieve the same. Whether you want to do a TV show, or another movie, or whatever, what matters is understanding. As a creator, I get not wanting to feel constricted in creative vision, but you have to respect what came in the past in order to embrace the future. If you don't, you end up with something so meaningless and without direction that it feels like a waste of time with a dead end that goes nowhere. Changes are inevitable in an adaptation, but if you change the core of a story, that can be more damaging in the long run than simply giving a character a different hair color. If you're a fan of this series, I implore you to share this video and get this message out there that as loyal fans and paying audience members, we don't like being screwed around when it comes to the stories we care about on a deep level. If fan reaction to a leaked footage can get Deadpool a movie, maybe something like this could get Percy Jackson another shot. Probably not, I'm only a small channel, but hey, a guy can dream. Adapting a story isn't all about simplifying it down to fit a new medium. I believe it should be about respecting the core of what made a story work in the first place, and how that can be embraced on the big screen. And that, my friends, is how I believe you should adapt a book.
Hey, Noah Cream wanted me to let you know that there's a bunch of rewards you can earn by becoming a Patreon of this channel, including early access to all content, PDF copies of scripts, and getting to become a class member of Stories as Lessons, including a Google Hangout, invite to chats, and guaranteed requests. However, if a certain god with a thunderbolt has banned you from ever using currency and happiness, don't worry, you can still support this channel by giving a like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'm sure Noah will see you next time.